I remember the day I first heard about the abandoned school. People whispered of a place caught in a haze of dust and memories, frozen in time with chalk-scrawled secrets. My curiosity was piqued by accounts from a few brave trespassers, Sybil-laden blackboards, chilly corridors, and the lingering scent of rotting books. They described a single large classroom at the end of the main hall, its walls peeled and plaster crumbling. It was there, so the rumors went, that a teacher vanished. No one could recall if she left of her own will or something worse had happened. No official explanation existed, only shards of speculation about her final moments. Naturally, a story like that begged me to investigate. I arrived at the school late in the afternoon, desperate to catch the last rays of sun. The building was set apart from the rest of the neighborhood, as though even the new developments around it were too afraid to get close. Shattered windows and rusted fences greeted me, establishing a foreboding atmosphere that matched every rumor I'd heard. The front doors were boarded up, but through a gaping hole beside them, I slipped inside, stepping over the broken boards like a thief in someone else's nightmare. The interior stank of decay. A damp, moldy smell clung to the halls. The tile floor was coated with debris, shattered glass, curled papers, and fragments of desks. I tried flicking on a flashlight, but my hand shook enough to create ghostly arcs of light dancing along the corridor. It felt like every corner stored some shape waiting to come alive. My heart pounded so hard it echoed in my ears, rattling my confidence in time with each cautious step. I nearly turned around, more than once, but pushed myself onward. I followed the main hallway, head ducked down to shuffle past rows of abandoned lockers. Some were bent open, others so rusted shut that no human hands could pry them loose. Vague memories of the place as an active school nagged at me. Old photos in the library archive showed bright halls with hopeful students. Now the building looked like it had rotted from the inside out. Water damage had bubbled the pinkish tile on the walls, and black streaks of mold ran like tears down the corridors. Silence pressed in on me so firmly that my own breath sounded like a storm. I stepped over a half-collapsed door that led into a large classroom near the end of the hall, likely the one I'd heard about. Dull light filtered in through tall windows with shattered panes. Rows of overturned chairs were scattered haphazardly, as if a panicked exodus had occurred. Torn posters about safety regulations and class schedules fluttered in the slight breeze. There, at the center of the room, stood an old blackboard. It was caked in dust, with only a small patch cleared away, revealing cryptic markings drawn in pale chalk. In the swirl of dusk, those symbols seemed to glow. With trembling fingers, I brushed away some of the grime framing the chalkboard. The symbols were unlike anything I'd seen, a haphazard collection of geometric shapes and odd runic letters, linked by lines that followed no obvious pattern. Triangles intersected circles, while spirals looped around strange glyphs. Something reminded me of old alchemical scribbles from Renaissance textbooks, the kind some believed carried hidden power. My throat went dry as I reached out, unable to tear my gaze from the design. The lines were drawn with erratic force, some deeply gouged into the slate, others quivering as if made by an unsteady hand. Suddenly I heard a light sound behind me, like a piece of chalk rolling across the floor. I spun around, raising my flashlight. Nothing. My mind raced with irrational thoughts. Was I alone? Did I want to be alone? The only creatures that could logically be in the building would be rats or birds, yet something told me I should expect something far less mundane. The hush was absolute, broken only by my own shallow breathing. I walked to the door and scanned the hall, shining my flashlight into the gloom. Empty. The boarded-up entrance made me confident no one had followed me, and the windows were barred. Still, my skin prickled, and I felt sure I was being watched. Crouching near the blackboard, I noticed tiny footprints in the layers of dust. They were smaller than a typical adult's, faint and fading, leading toward the corner of the room. My heart hammered. Could someone else have been here recently? I followed them with cautious steps, stepping over toppled desks. The footprints ended abruptly at a section of the wall, which was cracked with water damage. A cluster of scribbles, half hidden behind a rotting bookshelf, caught my eye. A paper tacked to the wall disintegrated at my touch, leaving fragments of words. She's not. We can't. Fear. Help. Each incomplete phrase conjured nightmarish possibilities, but nothing conclusive. Finally, I returned to the blackboard and took a closer look at the chalk drawings. Beneath the cryptic symbols, half obscured by dust, was writing in English. Quickly, I wiped the slate with my sleeve. Words emerged, messy but legible. Don't trust the eye. Know my lesson. Despair lives here. And beneath that, the initials FL. I vaguely recalled that the missing teacher's name was Fiona Langham, though the stories never mentioned her full name. A chill ran through me. This was her final message, the teacher's last thoughts scrawled on a blackboard no one had seriously read in decades. I wondered what "don't trust the eyes" meant. Eyes? Whose eyes? My mind conjured visions of watchers lurking in the shadows. My gut told me each symbol had meaning, some hidden code or puzzle. Fiona Langham had been known as a brilliant instructor, if a bit eccentric. Colleagues recalled her obsession with obscure references in literature and history. Could these chalk runes be connected to her lessons? I resolved to copy them, preserving every strange line, but urgency tugged at me. Something about the building felt alive, like it was breathing in the gloom. No sooner had I retrieved a small notepad from my jacket pocket than I noticed a door behind the teacher's desk. In a functioning school, that door likely led to a supply closet or office. This door was ajar, revealing more blackness. My heart pounded as I approached it. The corridor behind was narrow and smelled stale. Dim light from the classroom barely penetrated. I whispered a question into the darkness, absurdly expecting an answer. Is anybody there? A hint of an echo taunted me. I swallowed hard and tested each step on the creaking floorboards. At the end of this narrow space, I found a smaller room that felt more like a personal sanctuary. A single window, caked with dust, allowed a fraction of light inside. Shelves lined the walls. Stained textbooks and notebooks were scattered across them. One corner contained a wooden desk with a single chair, both covered in a fine layer of grime. On the desk rested a crate full of chalk. My flashlight revealed that each stick had been worn down significantly, as if someone had been writing relentlessly on the blackboard for hours upon hours. My fingers traced the thick layer of dust, stirring up a haze and revealing a lone lesson plan. Scribbles that included random words. Broken mind. Warning. Last class. Obsession. Nothing made sense at first glance. Then I discovered a thin journal pushed against the back of the desk drawer. The name F. Langham was embossed on its frayed cover. My pulse quickened. Could this hold the key to the cryptic drawings? The cover nearly tore as I opened it. Page after page contained the teacher's handwritten notes. Neat lines at first, devolving into scrawls. Cryptic messages about illusions. Cryptic messages and something referred to as the Watchers. I skimmed, barely making sense of her words. Frantically, she described an oppressive feeling of being observed. She wrote of the eyes, too many eyes, always in the corners of her vision. She claimed they followed her after class, that they materialized in reflections, shadows, reflections of shadows. She wrote that the Watchers demanded she share their secrets on the blackboard. The final pages were nearly illegible, ink blotched across them, and her handwriting turned manic. She referenced nightmares bleeding into her waking life, a secret code that had to be taught to her student or else. The last entry ended abruptly with the words, "I realize now that no one can see the Watchers but me, yet that does not make them any less real. I've delivered their message. If I disappear, let my final lesson be a warning to all who follow me." Below that, scrawled in thick black ink, she wrote, "Don't trust the eyes. Don't trust the illusions. Once they take notice of you, there is no escape." I clutched the journal to my chest. The temperature in the room plummeted, or maybe I simply felt exposed by the revelations. Though I tried to maintain a semblance of skepticism, the unnerving stillness of the school was wearing me down. My memories were overshadowed by the swirl of chalk lines and Fiona's heedful warnings. I told myself not to buy into half-crazed ramblings, but doubt was creeping under my skin. Was she psychotic? Or did something in this building unravel her mind, feeding her paranoia? I turned to go back to the main classroom, eager to set the journal aside and capture photos of the cryptic chalk symbols. As I stepped across the office threshold, I froze. That subtle, creeping feeling of being watched was stronger now. A faint whisper resonated in the corridor, a voice so soft I couldn't grasp the words. My flashlight flickered for an instant. Fumbling, I tapped it, bringing the beam back. "Hello?" I called, my voice quivering. No answer. But the whisper persisted, shifting direction as though circling me. I spun in place, half expecting to see eyes peering out from the gloom. Driven by mounting dread, I hurried back to the classroom. The presence of the blackboard, marked with cobalt-white chalk, felt both ominous and strangely grounding. At least I knew what I was dealing with there, physical evidence of someone's mania or fervor. Yet something had changed since I left. The arrangement of chairs on the floor seemed disturbed. 2 chairs had been dragged into the center of the room, side by side, as if waiting for spectators. My skin crawled. I knew I was alone, or at least I had been alone. So how did these chairs move? Without thinking, I shined my flashlight around the big space. Nothing had changed on the blackboard. Its cryptic imagery still loomed. Behind me, one of the chairs creaked. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around sharply, swinging the flashlight beam across the seat. Empty. My mind teetered on the edge. I wanted to run, abandon this wretched place and chalk it up as an overactive imagination. But guilt pressed on me. Wasn't I here for a reason? To find the truth behind Fiona Langham's disappearance? If I left now, it might haunt me. Gathering my courage by a fraying thread, I resumed my investigation. I raised my phone to document the chalkboard. The flash illuminated every contour of the surface. In that brief burst of light, I could have sworn I saw a silhouette in the corner. When darkness returned, the corner was vacant. My heart raced. After forcing several more photos, I stepped back to examine the shots. Most were normal, but one displayed a half-formed pale shape lurking behind a desk. A trick of the light? Likely. Yet, I couldn't dismiss the sense that something was painting itself into the edges of my perception, just as Fiona had warned. Don't trust the eyes, she'd said. Or maybe I couldn't trust my own eyes to distinguish illusions from reality. Desperate for clarity, I knelt where the chalkboard's lines were thickest and tried comparing them to the notes in Fiona's journal. Gradually, I began matching shapes. Some corresponded to the letters of an old substitution cipher used in puzzle exercises. I recognized it from a puzzle magazine. With painstaking care, I mapped each cryptic symbol to an English letter, flipping back and forth through the journal. Minutes stretched into an hour. The sun outside was almost gone, the shadows growing eerily long. Reluctantly, I flicked on a portable lantern I'd brought, hoping its steady light would calm my nerves. At last, I stumbled upon a coherent phrase hidden within the scribbles. It said, "The lesson is my confession. Find me." Beneath that, the next group of symbols, translated loosely to "abandon hope" or "abandon yourself." My mind spun with possibilities. Was Fiona instructing someone on how to follow her, or was she sending out a desperate SOS that no one had deciphered in time? I tested a few more lines, but the chalk scrawl was incomplete, or maybe too complex. A single symbol repeated near the message. A large eye with a vertical slit pupil. It reminded me of a reptilian stare, and just seeing it made beads of sweat form on my brow. Suddenly, I heard a rustling at the far corner, like textbooks sliding against each other. Determined not to succumb to panic, I mustered courage and stepped in that direction. Piles of broken chairs and battered desks lay in disarray. My flashlight revealed an outline that didn't quite match the background. Slowly, I realized it was a person, crouched in the shadows. Fear surged through me. "Who's there?" I demanded, voice shaking. The figure said nothing, but I sensed it shift slightly. I approached with caution, my lantern held high. The figure was no more than a shape at first, hunched and stilled. Upon drawing closer, I blinked. There was no one there, only an arrangement of stacked chairs, casting an odd silhouette. My breathing was ragged with relief and confusion. The Watchers, Fiona had written? Are they illusions or living horrors hidden in plain sight? I forced myself to move away, telling myself to keep a clear head. Yet, I couldn't ignore the suspicion that the watchers were turning my own perception against me. Seconds later, an inexplicable chill made every hair on my neck stand up. A voice whispered so close to my ear that I jerked around, nearly dropping my lantern. It was as if Fiona herself was speaking, her words drifting through the gloom. I couldn't make out the entire phrase, but I caught a fragment that sounded like, "Follow the knowledge." My pulse hammered. Had the building itself recorded her final pleas, replaying them for anyone who might discover them? Squeezing the lantern's handle, I retraced my steps to the teacher's office. Rummaging through the desk and shelves again, if there was more to the code, perhaps it was hidden in the old lesson plans. Eventually, behind a battered geometry textbook, I found a binder with meticulously typed instructions for advanced puzzles. The heading read, "Lesson in Symbolic Reasoning." Flipping through the pages, I noticed a series of complex ciphers. Some used letters replaced by shapes, others used a layering of multiple codes. One looked uncannily similar to the scrawl on the blackboard. Filled with new resolve, I took the binder to the main classroom, intending to break Fiona's code systematically. My mind whirled as I pored over the binder's instructions and compared them to the chalkboard script. The watchers, illusions or not, felt oppressive, an unseen presence creeping into the corners of my awareness. I fought to keep my focus, tracing each symbol until I reached a partial solution. As I decoded more words, a narrative took shape. Fiona Langham had encountered something beyond understanding, a presence that insisted she deliver a cryptic sermon. She believed it fed on hopelessness or fear. Her fear. The watchers thrived on the mind's unguarded corners. Then I arrived at a final cluster of runes. My heart pounded as the letters formed a dire phrase. Despair is the only exit. My lips went numb, and I dropped the piece of chalk I'd been using to annotate. Despair, the only exit. What did that mean? Was it a warning that surrender to hopelessness was the Watcher's goal? Or an instruction that to escape the Watchers, one had to embrace utter despair? My flashlight flickered ominously again. The darkness seemed to reach for the edges of my lantern's glow. The message sank deep, gnawing at me. Was Fiona telling me that she'd fled into the only path left to her, giving in to some final hopeless act? The rumors of her disappearance suddenly twisted in my mind. If despair was her exit, could she have taken her own life in this very room? Or had something else taken her? My fevered imagination conjured horrifying visions, though none were as distressing as the possibility that she hadn't left at all, that her presence and words were forever etched into the building's bones. My eyes returned to the chalkboard, to the line, "Don't trust the eye." Whatever the watchers were, they thrived on illusions. Was my only chance of escape to remain mentally grounded, to resist the siren call of hopelessness? Or had I already been ensnared the moment I stepped inside these halls? A sudden scraping sound broke my thoughts. My heart lurched. I spun around, the lantern casting sharp shadows. On the floor, a piece of chalk rattled across the tiles, as though propelled by an invisible hand. The hair on my arms prickled, courage fissured, replaced by a raw adrenaline that urged me to flee. I screamed at the silence. "What do you want from me?" My voice echoed. In that echo was a whisper. Or maybe I only imagined it, returning the question as though mocking me. "What do you want from me?" Confusion clenched my lungs. I staggered back, nearly knocking over a desk. The watchers, the illusions, Fiona's final code seared into my brain. I rushed, half blind with panic, toward the corridor leading to the exit. My battered flashlight danced across the walls, where I now noticed faint chalk markings that extended beyond the classroom. Symbols had been drawn across the hall, as if Fiona had roamed the building, scrawling her warnings. I realized I recognized some of them from the binder. Repeated phrases. Despair. I. Trapped. Flee. My chest tightened. No matter which direction my beam traveled, I saw more of those frantic glyphs. Suddenly, as I neared the main entrance, I discovered the boards I'd initially pushed aside were back in place, hammered swiftly and securely. My heart raced. This was impossible. No one else was here with me, yet the barrier was solid. My frantic attempt to pry the boards away was met with futility. Splinters dug into my fingers, and I banged my shoulder against the locked door, cursing in desperation. Whimpering softly, I stumbled to a window along the corridor. Bracing myself, I heaved a rusted chair to smash the glass. The impact was dull. The glass was too thick, or maybe it was replaced with something reinforced, or possibly, in my newly frenzied state, I wasn't hitting with enough force. I tried again. The window resisted. Panic soared, and I lost precious composure. After a frantic struggle, I paused to catch my breath. The corridor's musty gloom enveloped me, a hush that felt alive. The watchers seemed to watch more intensely. I thought of Fiona, scribbling her final lesson into the blackboard, believing that some presence trapped her. A dreadful notion glimmered in my mind. If the watchers feed on despair, were they orchestrating everything to push me to an emotional precipice? Their illusions might steer me into hopelessness, fulfilling the message scrawled on the board. I steeled my nerves. I refused to become another victim lost in the labyrinth of illusions. Taking shaky steps, I made my way back to the main classroom, the center of all the cryptic writing. The blackboard stared at me, the stark white chalk lines forming that monstrous eye with the vertical pupil. I recalled Fiona's final notes. Don't trust the illusions. Once they take notice of you, there is no escape. Unless despair is the only exit. My mind battled with conflicting interpretations. Did she imply that self-destruction was the watcher's trap? Or was she urging me to recognize that despair was nothing but another illusion? The building rattled with the weight of my silence. In a surge of rebellious determination, I pulled one of the scattered chairs upright and sat directly in front of the blackboard. I gazed at the cryptic symbols, then at the runic eye. I will not succumb, I said, as if declaring war against an enemy no one else could see. My voice trembled, but held a spark of defiance. The watchers wanted me hopeless, but I wouldn't hand them that. Behind me, the corridor flickered with shifting shadows. I felt them swirl as though on the edge of my vision. I stayed seated, refusing to chase illusions. The air crackled. A new sound, faint yet agonized, swept past my ear. It was a well-distant echoing. Was it Fiona's voice, or just another trick? Every instinct screamed to get out, but I knew a headlong sprint into darkness would only add to the watcher's advantage. Instead, I closed my eyes, focusing on the weight of the chair beneath me, the steady beat of my heart. I mouthed silent reassurances. Don't trust the illusions. Don't trust the illusions. To despair meant succumbing. If the watchers thrived on that, my refusal to give in might loosen their power. Seconds crawled by. Slowly, the chaotic swirl of illusions seemed to lessen. The oppressive sense of being observed receded to a dull throb. When I opened my eyes, the corridor was as empty as any abandoned building. No strange figures lurked. The blackboard remained the same, yet it no longer glowed with malevolence. It stood as a relic of someone's final stand, a testament to a teacher's unraveling, or enlightenment, perhaps both. I exhaled. With measured steps, I returned to the front entrance. The boards blocking my way were still there, but now they were loose as I had originally left them. Had they ever been re-nailed, or was that another illusion? My shoulders shook with relief as fresh air spilled into the corridor when I pushed the broken door open. The gloom parted, and I stumbled outside, blinking at the starkness of twilight. For a moment, I was disoriented, uncertain if I was truly free. I glanced back at the school's husk. I felt no triumph returning to the open air, only a grim acceptance. Perhaps there was no single, rational explanation for what had happened inside. Maybe the watchers were manifestations of guilt, despair, or supernatural forces feeding on isolation. Fiona had been a teacher, consumed by her discovery, scrawling urgent warnings that most had dismissed as lunacy or never bothered to see at all. But I had witnessed enough to know that something resonates within those walls, something that demands a price in fear and hopelessness. I survived, whether through reason or luck, because I refused to yield to the illusions. Walking away, I couldn't entirely shake the feeling that the watchers might have followed me, that every reflection around me might harbor a chalk-drawn eye, watching from the edges of my perception. The journal's final pages remained lodged in my memory, and the echo of Fiona's last words haunted me. Even though I was free of the building, the final lesson drifted in my thoughts. That place is more than just a decaying structure. It's a crucible of fear. Once it has you in its grip, you must choose either to surrender or to fight with every ounce of will you possess. In the end, I never found a definitive answer to the puzzle of Fiona's disappearance. Her final message, those cryptic symbols glowing on the blackboard, remains an open question. But I suspect her lesson, taught in absentia, was that the watchers are drawn to our private darkness, feeding on hopelessness. If so, I can only hope she found her own waysome path beyond illusions, whether in life or beyond it. And I hope that, wherever she went, she at least knows that someone read her message, someone bore witness to her desperation, and someone, at least for now, escaped.